interesting. And you touched on pressure as well, because on a gravel bike without suspension, I know there's some people now rocking specialized suspension systems and things, but generally we don't have suspension. So lower tire pressure also acts as our suspension on the gravel bike as well to make the ride a little bit more comfortable. So what are the considerations when you're judging grip versus suspension versus terrain versus body weight? Do you have a calculation you do? Do you use an online calculator?
No, I mean, I do. I like the Silica tire calculator and the Envy tire. They have kind of a table that I really like. I kind of go between those because I think they play very differently based on what you're riding and how much you weigh. I think it's harder in the heavier you weigh because pinch flatting is probably the biggest issue in gravel. But for me, it's usually starting with, okay, what's the race like and where is it going to be won? So am I going to risk it for this one section so I can have a better finish? So like, I guess the easiest way is through actually saying tire pressure. So I weigh about 64 to 65 kilos. I will consistently move between the lowest, probably at 28 PSI in the front, 30 rear, up to maybe 33, 35. And these are all starting pressures because you have to expect with most of these races starting early, you're going to gain 2 PSI with pressure or with going up in altitude and having temperature go up.
That was something I never figured. I had Sofia Gomez on the podcast talking about this, and I never figured that at all.
Yeah. And it changes when you're talking about like 2 PSI difference. It's a lot. If you're starting at 35 and it ends up at 37, it's a hard tire. And then my other thing that I just learned, and I think I want to harp on, is skinnier is not always faster on gravel. Like I will almost always go with the bigger tire that is a little more suspension and just gives you a little more cushion because I think for the most part, it's also faster.
Is there a point where it's not faster? Like, is there diminishing marginal returns? I'm running the 47 Pathfinders, and they're pretty much the biggest tire I can get into my Factor Ostro gravel bike. But is there, if you go from a 47 to a 49, do you think that's faster again? At some point, it has to not be.
When you're really racing, like all of our races still have asphalt, right? So there's not a full, like, not like the Traca, where most of our races have some asphalt inside. I don't think I would ever go past a 45. And I've raced a 45 once this year. So I think most of the time for me, it's between a 40, 42 is the fastest. There's a lot of guys who are like, oh, should I run a 35? I'm like, you should run a 40.
Interesting, because Dylan Johnson reckons, I had him on the potty a couple of months back, he reckons 47's faster almost on every conditions, including asphalt.
Yeah, and this is where Dylan and I disagree about a lot of things. I think there's things to be tested by yourself. There's things to be tested equipment-wise, and then you also have to remember that gravel is not, the way we were racing gravel is not gravel to be ridden. Riding 47s, I think, spectacular. Racing 47s, I don't know there's much value to be gained because you are at the whim of someone ahead of you. So if someone ahead of me has let's use Keegan, for example, right, and we're at Unbound, and he has a bigger gear than me, he's running a 50-10, and I have a 50-11. It's a bigger gear and a faster tire, because I do think no matter what you say, aerodynamics-wise and rolling resistance, if you're running gravel pressures, a skinnier tire is going to be faster on asphalt. Yeah, I have to keep up with him. It's not my choice. I don't get to ride my pace. I'm racing Keegan. So in that term, I don't think you can always say, I do believe that the 47 is faster if you have a very consistent test.
It's interesting because the road tires are getting wider and wider as well. And it's like, we're going to meet somewhere in the middle. There's not that much difference between my gravel tires and my road tires now.
Yeah, and that's where I think like pretty much the road tires are gonna cap out at like 30s. Most of the Tour de France teams are back on 28s, 30s, and you're going to have. I don't think gravel's going to start going below 38s. I think there's going to be a tiny gap in the middle. It's pretty much useless unless you're like, I just want cushion, and that's where I think like the 47, 49 and the 35s, 32s are just going to be used, for either high end road or high end gravel when you just want to go train and have fun.
There's been so much innovation around this. Like when I was racing full time, I was racing 21s, 140 PSI, regardless of the conditions. You might let 5 PSI out if it was pouring rain, but that was it. Now I'm running 30s on 65 PSI on the GP 5000s tubeless ones. and that's the recommended pressure off Silka's website, and
Yep.
they rock.
Yeah, it's changed. I mean, I still like the only time I ran tubulars at Road Nats this year, 24mm tubulars. It's
Nice.
a crazy feeling to get back on them. Like I was just like, holy shit, and they rip. They are so fast. But you could never take them anywhere off road.
I miss gluing tubular tires. There was something romantic about it. I used to pour myself a nice glass of red wine and just pull the glue out, and I don't know, I kind of missed that. It was like old school.
Gluing, yes. Taking old glue off, I'd never have to do again. I'd be happy.
If you enjoyed this video and you want to keep binge watching the content, check this video. It's a cracker. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way, I can catch you in the next one. See you then.